Welcome to the Revealed podcast, where your stories are revealed and God is revealed in your story. You'll hear stories from people who are connected to the Red Hills region of Southwest Georgia. The people who share come from all walks of life. They're male and female, and they have different backgrounds. Some stories will leave you wondering how the storyteller ever survived. Others are simple but will touch your heart. We hope the stories that you hear encourage you in your own walk. And my name is Cassie Durham, and I'm your host. Welcome to the Revealed podcast. And today I'm sitting in the Fountain of Life Rescue Center, and I had to learn how to pronounce my guest's name, but his name is Dan Salveter. How did I do?
Perfect.
Yay! Like I said, I gave it the good old Southern try the first time, and I really butchered your name really bad, so I'm sorry about that.
When I first moved down south, living in Greenwood, South Carolina, I heard Salveter. What kind of Yankee name is that?
Well, out of curiosity, what are the origins of that name? Because I've literally never heard it.
We're not sure. I thought we knew Italian, but then when I did the DNA test, I'm like 52% Scottish and English. So I know I've got Italian, German, French, and now English blood. So it's Eastern European, Western European.
You sound about like me. I call myself one of those Heinz 57s.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I love Ferrari cars, not that I could ever own one. So I prefer the Italian. I love Italian food.
Well, you do have a GT Boss Mustang. That's pretty cool. I'm a car person.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so my first car was a 71 Ford Mustang convertible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, now it had a 302 in it. It didn't have the Boss, the 5.0 liter. It didn't have that. So not as fast as your car, Dan.
I'm too old to drive too fast.
Nah. So what other hobbies do you enjoy?
Well, I love all sports. So I'm an enthusiastic sports watcher, but I play pickleball. I actually moved south because I hated wintertime. I grew up in Indiana, and I hated wintertime. Now, I can still remember this weekend. There's a weekend where the ambient temperature was 27 below zero. I just graduated from Purdue, and I stepped out on the front porch and said, I do not have to live here anymore. I'm headed south. And I went south. And I did that so I could golf year-round. I used to be an avid golfer. But since I found pickleball, I have not even picked up a golf club since. That's been about 3 years. So pickleball is my hobby. Of course, my faith, and serving at my church any way I can, and family. And I've started growing roses and a butterfly garden.
Well, the roses, you're in the perfect place with the City of Roses.
That's kind of a legacy my dad had. That's kind of a way to connect with him and honor him.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
Interestingly, my husband moved down here from Illinois.
Okay.
And he says now that he's lived in the South longer than he lived in Illinois.
Same here.
So, yeah, we kind of end up adopting you Yankees.
Right. And we have a mixture of an accent.
Yes, that is for sure. Well, since we talked about pickleball, I do want to go ahead and just bring up the fact that the Fountain of Life Rescue Center is going to be having a pickleball tournament.
That's right.
And you're in charge of putting all of that together. And if people wanted to find out more about that, how they could play in it, how they could be a sponsor, or even if they just wanted to give to the shelter, how could they find out more information about that?
Okay. So this is our third. We call it the Fountain of Life Classic. It's our third one we've done. And it'll be March 28th at the Thomas County Middle School courts. So we got 6 courts. We're trying to do it all in one day. They've got lights out there so we can go till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So it's Palm Sunday weekend. So we want to keep it off of Palm Sunday and we'll do it all in a day. We desperately, I shouldn't say desperately, that's not, enthusiastically welcome sponsors. That's our primary fundraiser for the year. And so this means a lot to us. And it means a lot to get the community sports. We need sponsors, and we also need players. We have all age levels, all skill levels, men's doubles, women's doubles, and mixed doubles. on that. We are partnering with Southern Pickleball this year, which is they put on pickleball tournaments. They're out of Macon, Georgia. They designate this as a qualifier tournament. So if they go to southernpickleball.com, they can find our tournament. I've got flyers out at the courts. They're also at the Y, and we just try to put them out. Each board member tries to put some out around the community. So you can see, and they're like kind of light blue, sky blue in color. Some would say Carolina blue in color. I wouldn't call it
You
that.
gave me one. So since you're in the camera, you want to just hold that up so people can be on the lookout for that if they're around the town of Thomasville and see that Carolina blue colored flyer.
Yes. And then you can scan the QR code. You can go to southernpickleball.com. I've put it all over Facebook and all the pickleball groups in Facebook, and I'll keep bumping it up to the top of the list every day. Not every day, every week to do that.
Great.
And so it should be pretty visible. But
Well, it sounds like a lot of fun for the community and a great way to raise money for the shelter. So tell me a little bit about you and how you got involved in helping the shelter out here in Thomasville.
Sure. So I was attending First United Methodist Church, and there's a gentleman by the name of Jimmy Moore who was close or very fond of my father-in-law. My father-in-law is a retired Methodist pastor, Burns Willis. And I met Jimmy through Burns. And Jimmy found out I was a social worker. Jimmy actually had his doctorate in social work. And he said, yeah, I'm trying to start this shelter. And so I've known of Jimmy's efforts for quite a while. They got the shelter up and going in 2019. I didn't join the board until 2023. I retired from the county school system in 2022, and somebody asked me to be on the board, and I thought, sure, I want to help the homeless. I've always had a heart for homeless people and people that are experiencing that. And I thought, well, that's a good way I could help. So I joined the board then in 2023.
And you and I talked before we had this interview today, and one of the things that I mentioned to you, when you hear the word homeless, there's so many more people that we're seeing nowadays that are homeless.
Yes.
Growing up, I just didn't see that many people who were homeless. Now, my grandmother was born in 1895. Now, she died in 1995, so she's been gone a long time, but she lived 100 years. And I do remember her and my mom talking about how there were people back, like when my mom was growing up, who would come around and would ask for food. Not as many as you saw, and they would often ride the railroads going from place to place. And I think that's kind of how the term hobo came about. And I certainly don't mean to use that in a derogatory sense. I'm just sharing some history of what my grandmother told me of when people would come around and how they got from place to place. Because back then we didn't have as many cars. You couldn't travel as easily. That's right. But what are we seeing in Thomasville as far as our homeless population?
Well, it's significant. I just participated in a point in time count, called a big count at the end of January. And one of the things, nobody is really focused on homelessness. I say nobody, no federal entity or even state entity really is focused on homelessness in Thomasville. And so they think, well, I have a homeless down there. And we know that we do have a significant homeless population here. So we did that pit count. Estimates are that we have over 300 homeless in Thomas County. The people who would know kind of have made that estimate. That wasn't the number with the pit count. It was like 230, 240. But keep in mind, we did that on the coldest night of the winter. This was January 26th, which is the coldest night we've had yet. So we go out after dark, and each volunteer was assigned a certain region. You just try to interact and count and eyeball and get an accurate count. And what that does, since we're now participating in that'll help the community qualify for different grants that are available. Those grants are difficult to get, but it will at least start to lay the foundation work for doing that.
Are those grants difficult to get because so many other communities are vying for those funds?
Well, we we found out about a grant through the Department of Community Affairs in Georgia that we thought the Department of Community Affairs is basically telling people, please apply for this grant. We have this money. We want to give it out. We want to give it out. And I'm new to the grant process, at least definitely on the state level. But I convinced our board, yeah, we need to apply for this grant. So we applied for it, thinking, yeah, this will help us be open an extra night a week at least. We'll get this. And we applied. The deadline was in April during tax season, and our grant writers are accountants. They're a bookkeeper, and so we had to find another source to write the grant for us. They were going to let us know in August, and I think it's actually September, they let us know our name wasn't on the list, and I'm like, it's like this is a sure thing. And they said, they used the term, this is a competitive grant. Now, you learn from experience. What I understand is that means they have certain categories that they give you points for. And if you accumulate a certain number of points, you'll get the grant. Well, they didn't tell us. Now, we're an emergency shelter. And what that means, emergency shelter means, is we open at 6 p.m. in the evening, and people are released back at 8 a.m. So technically, by a federal term, we're a warming station, something like that, a warming shelter. We're a warming shelter, but we're an emergency shelter. We're a safe place where people come. They're on the streets. They can bathe, wash their clothes. They get fed good food, and they have a safe place to sleep. They don't have to be looking over their shoulder. But that's our niche, an emergency shelter. But the primary thing the Department of Community Affairs was looking for was a shelter that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They said, well, you aren't open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I went to the workshop, and like, nobody mentioned that at the workshop of a requirement. So that was, that's kind of like, that was a real letdown. We're like, okay, trust in God, like God will lead us to other paths. Right. But we're hoping to get that path.
So at this point, you all are completely privately funded.
Privately funded. Churches, a handful of churches support us monthly. Our private donor base is growing. We have monthly supporters. It is growing and growing and growing. We're grateful for that. It's put us in a better position. And of course, our goal is to be open 7 nights a week. So we'll not be satisfied until we can get open 7 nights a week. We get the private foundations. We have several foundations locally that are generous to us and donate also. We don't miss the opportunity to let them know our need and the community needs. So, but that's it. We don't get any money from the government, local, state, anything. And that just doesn't seem right to me. Imagine what our local police would do if we didn't have the shelter here.
Right.
They'd be at the jail. Not everybody, but you would have more incidences. It would be more of a community problem if we weren't here.
And it's interesting that you say that, because I just finished doing a weekly Bible study at the jail. I recently stopped doing that because I just have some other things that I'm involved in now. But I have learned from the sheriff what a holding pen they have become for people who are homeless and for people who no longer can get mental health services at places like Southwestern. And you and I, both coming from a social work background, we understand how vital those services are to people. Right. But I know, too, that you have a heart for God.
Yes.
And would you mind just talking to me a little bit about your personal testimony and how that's impacted you and where you're at now?
So I was raised in a church, the United Methodist Church in Marion, Indiana. And, when you're brought up in a church, you might get great wisdom and theological knowledge and all of that. I was just a kid, and it was just what we did. And I remember, I can tell you the exact date, January 5th, 1975, at the end of youth group. I was a freshman in our high school youth group. It was led by a teacher in town. And at the end of youth group, Steve McNeely came up to me and said, "Hey, do you know what it means to be born again?" Well, I had a friend, Johnny Baldwin, who had talked to me when we were, I don't know, 12 or 13 years old, 12 years old, and said, you know what it means to be born again? And I, no, tell me what it means. He told me, and it didn't really click. And I thought, well, I was I was in a bowling league, and to be cool, I used to cuss when something didn't go right. And I thought, well, I need to stop cussing. And when Steve asked me that question, you born again? I thought, well, yeah, I must be because I stopped cussing in bowling. And he explained what it was, and I said, I want that on January 5th, 1975. I said, I want that. And that's when I say that to me, that's when my faith journey started. Although probably it started before then, but that's when I started to understand and I started to pursue. I wasn't there just because of my parents had me go to church. I was there because I want to be there. And of course, that's will forever be the greatest day of my life. And I had lots of great days. My wedding day on August 18th, 1990, but in the picture of eternity, what greater thing could have happened than to me to understand who Jesus was and what he did for me, and what that means for my life. So that's what I consider my beginning time of my faith journey. I struggled with what to do in life. I call myself just a kid having fun, a knucklehead. So I asked my dad what to do in college, what I should pursue, because he was super smart. And he told me, and I'm like, all right. I knew I was going to Purdue, but I studied industrial management. Something called calculus got in the way of me completing that. I knew I had to find out something. So a man who led a Bible study that I was loosely affiliated with in college said, if you commit your ways to the Lord, he'll give you the desires of your heart. I think that's in Psalm 37. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, what are the desires of my heart? I love sports. I'm not good enough to play sports on this college level or anywhere, but I love sports. I think I'll try to be a sports broadcaster. So I started doing that. Got a job at WMTY. Did I say the W right? They have a way of saying it. The mighty 1090 in Greenwood, South Carolina. That's when I moved south and started working there. Pursuing my sportscasting degree, or not degree, career. I just started thinking God was working in my heart. A lady, there was one of my accounts who ran a store. Her name was Lenora Spearman, was kind of a spiritual mentor and a guide. And I just felt the Lord was leading me away from sports broadcasting and into ministry. I didn't know what that ministry was. So to me, ministry went, you go to seminary, you become a pulpit preacher. And so I left the radio station and got accepted to Candler School of Theology at Emory University in Atlanta, moved to Atlanta. I did that for a year. And Angie, I was still a knucklehead in seminary. I was enjoying living in Atlanta. I wasn't living a decadent life or anything like that, but I'm doing seminary. I'm studying to serve a church and a group of congregation, and I'm goofing off. I'm not studying until there's a test, and I'm cramming the night before and all that. I said, this is not right. You can't be doing this. You got to be more serious about this. And it felt like a dog being pulled on a chain, on a leash, who doesn't want to go there. I felt like, no, God, I thought I wanted this. I don't want this. And I talked to my academic advisor. His name was Romney Mose. You should drop out. I'm like, you're letting God down. How can you drop out? He said, no. He said, it's okay. You should drop out. If you're truly called, you're going to be like Jonah. You will not be able to get away from it. I think you need to drop out and figure out what to do. And so I dropped out from seminary. You talk about a guilt trip. And I was just like, I have let God down. But I felt like really it was the only thing I could do. So I think out of guilt, I started volunteering everything I could find to do in Atlanta. I had to find a job. My undergrad was in business, so I got a job in business, in sales. But I started volunteering. I volunteered at Georgia Regional in Decatur, up there, psychiatric hospital. I was on the board of Atlanta Urban Aid. I started trying to do everything I could do in Atlanta. And there's a gentleman by the name of Travis Barnes, who was the chair of the board of Atlanta Urban Aid. And he said, he had his master's in divinity and master's in social work. He said, I think you need to look into social work. I was like, social work? Okay. And I remembered back and had a career aptitude test when I was in that struggle in college, and it said I was suited for ministry or social work. And I thought of that, thought, I've heard of that before. Maybe I need to be thinking about it. When I was 31, I got married when I was 30. When I was 31, my wife's job had a parsonage supplied to it. And we looked at it and said, well, we could afford to go down to one income. And I thought, I've got to go back. I've got to get my master's of social work. So that's a long story, but I went back to the University of South Carolina to get my master's of social work, commuted from St. Simon's Island for 2 years up to as a 4-hour drive.
Oh gosh.
I would leave at 4:45 in the
I
morning
don't know
when I
how
had
you
to get
did
up,
that.
up on campus and did that for 2 years. But it was, again, a great decision
Yeah,
to do that.
as you and I were talking earlier too, it is amazing how even when we don't always know the plan for our life, God is ordaining our steps.
That's right.
And, we don't even realize sometimes what the desires of our heart are, but God does.
That's right.
And it seems like He kept pulling you in that direction.
Well, here's an amazing thing, right? I can really see God's prevenient grace in my life. When I went to Candler School of Theology, you didn't have to pass the GRE to get in. But they told us, you have to take it. So after we were already in, they pulled all the first-year students, put us in a room, said, take the GRE. We don't care what you score, you have to take it. Okay. We just sat down and took the GRE. And when I was trying to get into the school at the University of South Carolina, the Master's of Social Work, they required a GRE. Now, I looked at my score, and I thought, oh, you're going to have to take that again. And then I started looking at it again. I thought, wait a minute, you might be reading that score wrong. Call and find out. And I called the GRE people back when you talk to a human, and they said, yeah, you're reading it wrong. This is your score. And I looked at it like, it was good enough to get in University of South Carolina. And so I applied in March, got accepted within a couple of months. By June of 1991, I knew I was going. And within a year, everything changed. They didn't charge out-of-state tuition at the time. So I got in with in-state tuition. And then the social work boom hit. It was a 1.5 year wait to get even accepted. And I got in just in the nick of time before that hit. Then I had to go for 2 years as I was a business grad. And that after that first year, they said, oh, we're charging out-of-state tuition from now on. They said, if you're already in the program, we won't charge you. I mean, look at God's prevenient grace.
That is, yeah.
Just like, okay.
Yeah.
that's a sign.
Yeah.
Just like, thank you, Lord.
Yes.
That was wonderful.
Yes. And looking back on all that now, have you ever regretted taking that option or?
No. I was terrified. That first test is in your master's. You can't get below a B average. And I did not get a B average in my undergrad. I thought, I don't know if I can do this. God, you've got to walk with me. I don't know that I could do this, and I don't know what else I'll do. So I was terrified, but no regrets. And for any of my dreams and wishes I would have had as a child, being a professional athlete, anything, no way would I trade that for what I've got to experience, what I've gotten to do. That's God led me to where I was called. And I realized there's so many forms of ministry.
Yeah.
Just saying behind that pulpit is not the only form of ministry. God needs it everywhere.
That's right. Yeah,
everywhere.
100%. Yeah. Sometimes we don't even realize we're in ministry, and
That's right.
And we are. Even if we have, a job working in business, you can be a good Christian business person who treats people well and demonstrates good ethics to people. There's just so many different ways.
Many people remember Hutch Hutchinson.
Yeah.
And Hutch always said, this wasn't his original quote, but he said this often, and Hutch lived what he preached. He said, people won't remember what you say, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And now everybody who knows Hutch, think about how he made us all feel.
Yeah.
And that's how we live out our faith, no matter what we're doing.
Yeah. And I think that's what the Bible does mean about people will have fruit if they
Yes.
truly have a relationship with Jesus Christ. Because, there's more and more people who are coming out and they're proclaiming Jesus as their Savior. And I'm
Mhm.
specifically talking about some of the celebrities we're hearing now.
Yes.
But their fruit doesn't always add up to their speech. That's, again, I'm not trying to judge people. God does say to test the spirits. And so, in some of those regards, living in the times we live now where there's so much deception, I still think we just have to be aware.
Yes, that's right. John 3:16, we all love to quote that. Whoever, believe in the Lord, you will be saved. But we take our belief, I think a lot of people take the belief, do we believe in Santa Claus?
Yeah,
But belief is deeper than just saying,
that's right.
yeah, I believe in
Yeah.
the Lord. If you believe, I think you're right. You'll see it in how you live.
Yeah, because James talks about how the demons believe.
Yes.
And so if they believe and they act the way they do, then how much different our lives should be. Because
That's right.
we bear the image of Christ. And in so bearing his image, we take his name in vain when we don't live and walk the walk.
That's right. That's right. I don't know who it is, but somebody said we might be the only Jesus some people see.
Right.
That's a huge responsibility
Yeah.
that we can't ever walk away from when we proclaim Christianity.
So there's the crux when we talk about homelessness, because again, some of the things that I've seen on Facebook, and I've even heard this in my Bible study, is people will make the comment, well, if we keep feeding them, they're going to keep moving to our town. And in Paul, Paul said in 2 Thessalonians 3 that if you don't if you don't work, you don't eat.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is kind of a fine line with, as a Christian, how do I respond to homelessness? Because it is so prevalent nowadays. So how do you respond to that?
Well, I first became aware of homelessness in Atlanta. I mean, there were homeless in the town I grew up in, but we had a large VA hospital in there. Everybody always said, well, they're from the VA hospital. So we just automatically, as a kid, I dismissed it. But Atlanta, out of my guilt, I started reaching out to homeless people and having conversations and talking with them. That's part of the journey that led me, I think, to social work. I was coming out of my former church now, First United Methodist, and there was somebody, it looked like they might have been homeless, walking down the other side of the street in front of the post office. And I say this as a matter of confession and a matter of repentance. My mind went to, gosh, I hope they stay on the other side of the street. I'm, filling your excuse. I'm in a hurry. I need to get home. I don't know what it was. I hope they stay on the other side of the street so I don't have to interact with them. And I mean, immediately, the Holy Spirit convicted me, said, the Lord sought out people on the other side of the street. He would have walked over there to interact with that person. And I'm just like, I'm guilty. I mean, I have nothing to say, but except that's right. That's right. So that moment has impacted me. I think the greatest tragedy of homelessness, and maybe I shouldn't quantify it, say greatest, but a great tragedy of homelessness is the invisibility. And so when we don't know what to do with the homeless, and I think that's a great question. I mean, I struggle with that. If you go down to Tallahassee, there's a homeless person on every corner, at least there was, and he's like, I can't help everybody. What do I do? I want to help. What do I do? But I think one of the significant things is when they become invisible. It's a tragedy. Nobody was invisible to the Lord. Nobody. Mm-hmm. And if they become invisible to us, when I got here, I came and unlocked the door. A stray dog came up. I'm an animal lover. A stray dog came up. I petted it, interacted with it. It was clearly wanting food. I'm like, I cannot be feeding the dog on the doorstep of the shelter and having a stray dog come here. So I went back up in my car. I looked the other way. I ignored the dog. I said, if I ignore the dog, he'll go away. Well, we're not talking dogs here. We're talking people.
Yeah.
And too often, I think we're left with that option. I either interact with him or I ignore him and pretend I don't see him. And again, we ask, what would Jesus do? I don't think Jesus would have ignored anyone and would have interacted with them on some level. And so the first homeless person, no, he's not the first, but one of the most public homeless people was a gentleman by the name of Mark. I honestly don't know what happened to him, but you might remember him. He used to sit on the corner of Publix. He'd just sit there by the Publix sign. He'd do that day after day after day. And people would interact with him. I interacted with him. I tried to talk to him. And he says, I'm just praying for people. They walk by, I say a prayer for him. He's professed a faith, and I just pray for people. And that kind of started my journey here and talking and interacting. I mean, I would interact with them, but that's when I started to say I need to take this on a deeper level. About that time, I got asked to be on the board of the homeless shelter here. And I thought, that's something I know I can do. And so I said, yes, let me do that. And take it beyond just wondering what to do. I have a saying, I used to say this to my high school kids. Believe it or not, I led a poetry group for about a semester. And I said, you don't know me unless you know, you can't judge me unless you know me, and you don't know me unless you know my story. So we don't know what's going on in that homeless person's life unless we take the time to know their story. Now, I'm not saying we have to take time to know every homeless person we encounter, their story, but I would say, challenge all of us to say, I don't know their story. I don't know what led them to that point. I don't know what's going on in their life right now. I just don't know. So let me refrain from judging and try to ask the Lord for discernment. How can I help? Now, I'm not saying that giving somebody money is a way to help. I don't give people money every time, but I'm not saying I don't give them money. There would be some people in the homeless community that would tell me, don't ever give them money. I'd be lying to you if I said I don't ever give them money. But I try to pray for discernment and ask about that. But the best way to help is to contribute to shelters like us and people that are directly helping the homeless and feeding the homeless and that kind of thing. That way you know your contribution is going to what you intend it to do. I do think it's a great question. What led to that? But I talked to somebody who works with the homeless a great deal, Tammy Murphy. I called before today, and she said, 80% of the people on the streets have experienced trauma of some type. And imagine the trauma of being homeless. Yeah. She said, so everybody who's homeless is experiencing trauma. Yeah. And as a social worker, what a profound impact trauma can have on your life. It changed everything. Yeah. Would we blame somebody who's fleeing domestic violence for being homeless? Right. One of my favorite students I had at Bishop Hall dropped out of school. His name was Matt. I said, Matt, why are you dropping out of school? He was 16. He said, my mama's living with a boyfriend who's abusing her. And she doesn't have a way to work. I'm dropping out of school so I can go to work and get my mama out of that environment. Now, there's a great chance that Matt, not having a high school education, will wind up homeless. Would anybody say he did the wrong thing? I couldn't tell him that. Could I judge him for being homeless if he wound up on the streets because he was trying to take care of his mother and he sacrificed himself and cut short his education? He was plenty smart to go as far as he wanted. He loved his mom and he wanted to take care of her and get her in a safer environment. You have people like that that are on the streets. Rent's gotten so expensive. If you lose a job and you don't have a nest egg set up, you can find yourself out on the streets. Yeah. And you mentioned the mentally ill in the jails. When 30 years ago, when they were closing down the Southwesterns of the world, they wanted to go to community-based care, but they forgot a piece, and that was how are there people that we mandate that they get treatment? Everything goes towards people having their free will. But if you're psychotic or if you're in a manic phase, your judgment is clouded.
That's right.
And so we forgot about how to mandate people. I mean, I understand the intentions were what they were, but yet we went all the way the other way. So,
Right. Because the story was we're taking away people's rights by
right,
making them get treatment. So
that's
we
right.
can't continue to offer this.
I've seen in my career, I've seen some profound struggle of people trying to preserve their rights, and doctors say, no, you have to be on this. No, I don't want to be on this. I mean, it's a difficult
It's hard.
question.
Yeah.
There's so much gray in there. You can't
Yeah.
possibly understand completely the loss of health insurance. If somebody, I mean, by the grace of God, I don't have cancer. What happens if I get cancer? It would change everything.
Yeah.
The amount of bills that
Yeah.
could go up. And if you don't have people lose their health insurance, if they don't have mental health insurance, if you can't afford meds, are you going to eat or take your meds? You're going to eat. And if you get off your meds, we know where that can lead. I mean, there's just so many things that go into it.
Yeah.
And so it's just such a complicated picture.
You bring up some really valid points. And I think as Christians, the bottom line is we just have to listen to the Holy Spirit. And if we
Yes.
feel that prompting from the Holy Spirit that we're to do, like you felt that nudging, go across the street and help that person,
Yes.
then we need to go do that. And we need to let the consequences be up to God. Because I remember reading
right.
this story one time in a book, and it's just always resonated with me. So I'm going to try to make this short without going into too much detail, but I've got to tell the story. So there was this lady in a city who was, she had been at the grocery store, and she was coming home one night, and the same homeless guy that she usually saw milling around her area was there.
Mhm.
And this particular night, she just felt like she was supposed to give him money. Even though normally she would give him food.
Yes.
But she had all her groceries, but she said, well, tonight I'm going to give him $100. I just feel like that's what I'm supposed to do. So she did. And so time goes by, and then at some point she sees this, or no, she saw somebody who knew this guy, and she was like, hey, what happened to so-and-so? Because like you said, you just kind of get to know people who are on the streets. Like you were talking about that guy at Publix, and that man goes, oh, I know what happened to him. She said, well, I gave him $100 one night. Do you know what he did with it? He goes, yeah, he took it to the bar and he got drunk. However, when that man was at that bar, there was a woman in that bar who started talking to him and hearing his story. And she found out that he had not been in contact with his family in 30 years.
Wow.
And she said, look, if I call your family right now, will you, talk to them? And he said, yes. Well, he ends up talking to his family. His family was so glad to hear from him. They ended up getting him in treatment, and he was doing great.
God, it's great.
Yeah. So
that's what we do. We judge from our context. That's what I mean. You can't judge somebody unless you know their story. Yeah. From my context, if I was going to the bar with $100 somebody gave me, yeah, they'd be sinful, and God was saying, you know better than that, all that. But look how God used that. What a beautiful story.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Does the shelter here have programs, for lack of a better word, in place to help people get jobs, find housing?
Well, we could always do more, but I feel strongly. I took on this pickleball tournament the first year, and our the chairman of the board or president or whatever was going to be president of Rotary, and he said, I can't do this anymore, Nate Tyler. So I think they saw how enthusiastic it was the pickleball tournament. He said, Dan, will you be our board chair? And I'm like, sure. I need to be careful when I say this, but if the Lord gives me an opportunity, I try not to say no. I try to say, yes, Lord, with your help. So I did that. And so, I became the board chair. I've been trying to get the board to work and realize it's like Paul's description of the body. There's all different parts of the body. Our niche is an emergency shelter. And, it's important to not get mission creep. That's our niche, is emergency shelter. You can come here on the nights we're open. And y'all remember, we're wanting to be open 7 nights a week. We're open 5 nights a week. We're thrilled. We just started on March 2nd. We're opening up our extra night. We were open 4 nights a week. For the remainder of the year, we'll be open 5 nights a week. A private donor gave us the the money to open an extra night for a full year. I have no clue who it was. We wouldn't know that, but we know that now we're open. Maybe there's somebody out there that can help us be open 6 or 7 nights a week. We know that's our niche, is to have a safe place where they can go clean up, get fed, wash their clothes. And we actually have an agreement with a business in town. It's actually Seminole Wind. They said, hey, you got somebody that can work and able to work, send them our way. We'll give them a job. So we do that. But we don't do that much. We just don't have the staff or the resources to do case management. But many people might know about Thomas County Cares.
Yeah.
And Tammy Murphy does case management. So we got a good partnership, and we got people we're happy to refer and say, this. We try to identify needs. These are the person's needs, and we need you to work with her, and so that's what I mean. Is all parts of the body. Chad Taylor does a street feed.
Right. I was just thinking of the street feed, and I was also thinking of Dave out at New Covenant Church who provides showers and clothing.
That's right.
I think they've even opened up a thrift store to help people out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So it's human nature for us to get territorial, but if we care about homeless, we care about everything going on for the homeless. And we don't. My old principal, Lana Hicks, the assistant principal at Bishop Hall, used to say, this place works if nobody cares about who gets credit for what goes on here. And I think that's such an important attitude to have in life. So, God knows. Jesus even said, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. Do it in secret, you'll be rewarded. Yeah. And so let's just focus on love our homeless community, and let's all do what we can. This is what we can do. We're the emergency shelter, and we can give you a safe place, feed you, and try to help you connect with other resources, other people that can help you.
Well, I know I am so glad to learn more about the shelter because I really didn't know all of this. And before I leave, I do want to take a quick tour and get some video, and that way we can show people online what's available here. And do you have anything else that you would add to what we've talked about today?
Well, I would encourage people, don't feel guilty if you don't know what to do about the homeless. If you feel like you ought to do something, that's the Lord pulling at your heart. And the Lord wants us to wrestle with these issues. I mean, as a matter of confession, I go down to Tallahassee. I get mad when I see homeless on every corner. I'm like, I can't help with every situation. And I would say that homelessness is a community problem. It's just like the saying was, it takes a village to raise a child. I think it takes a community to address homelessness. I think it takes every entity within the community to address homelessness. There's a homeless coalition that I participate in. It meets on the second Wednesday of every month at 11:30 at the Anglican Church, 11:30 to 1, where you get all these entities that are willing to participate in the homeless coalition that come together and try to pool resources. And I think that's going to be a model of how to deal with homelessness from community to community, because it affects us all.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand we don't need homeless people in front of our businesses panhandling. That's not we can't, it's not cold-hearted to say, no, there needs to be, you can't do that. So we need to understand that we all got to do what we can. John Wesley, I'm still a Methodist. I'm still United Methodist. I go to Grace United Methodist Church right now, a 3-year-old congregation. But he said, do all you can. Well, what you can do is between you and the Lord. And I can do this. I know what God has given me the skills to do, but somebody else might be able to fix a meal. They might be a great cook and say, I've got a baker's heart, and yes, I want to prepare food or whatever. So we just have to be confident in the gifts the Lord has given us and use those, commit those to the Lord, and the Lord will lead us into that.
Yeah.
That service and glorifying Him.
One last thought I have on all this too is just going back to what Tammy said, because this was something that I recognized in a jail. And again, being a social worker, I knew to ask these questions. I would say 90% of the people we have in the jail have been sexually abused.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. And so it's easy to condemn people for drug use.
Right.
But what's the primary way people get over the trauma of abuse? They don't go to
Stuff
therapy.
it and forget about it.
Yes. And that if one thing leads to another, it can lead to drug use and alcohol use because they're trying to run away.
Yeah.
And it's a tragedy. That's why we just don't know what they've experienced and what they've gone through.
Yeah. And the Bible clearly tells us, the way to overcome evil is by good.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I see that now so much too in the world that we're living in, that the powers that be, whoever they are, they want to divide you and me.
Yes. Yes.
And they want us to be focused on all these horrible, evil things that are going on. And we need to be aware of these things, but then we can't forget the person who's sitting by the side of the road who is hurting in ways that we don't even imagine.
That's right. And somebody might not have the courage, or not, that's not even the courage, the ability or the time to help with that person by the road.
Yeah.
That happens. That's life.
Right.
That's what it's called.
Yeah.
But they could help them by, say, donating to the Fountain of Life or somebody who's helping the homeless. They could help them that way.
Yeah.
And, I am helping.
Right.
The Lord didn't call me to help in this situation, but I am helping.
Yeah.
And Jesus said, we'll be judged with the same measure we judge others.
Yeah.
I can't quote you the exact scripture, but I know he said that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to need a lot of mercy. And I need all the mercy I can get.
Amen to that. Yeah. Because I think, too, going back to something really important that you said, it's just people being seen.
Yes.
One of the most profound videos I watched was this kid who just interviewed elderly people, and he said, "Do you feel seen?"
Mm.
And I cannot tell you how many of those elderly people said no. And you could see it in their demeanor. But when he started giving them that attention, it just did something to their spirit.
One thing I've been trying to do, we carry cards now. We often don't even carry cash. I don't think I have cash in my wallet right now, so I can't give somebody cash.
That's
right.
right.
I'm sure I'm giving them Venmo.
Yeah.
But we could listen and get their name.
Yeah.
And let them know I see you.
See you.
Yes, and that's a gift.
Yeah.
There too.
Yes.
That's such a good point.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed our time together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for asking.
Yeah, thank you for taking this time, just educating me, educating the public more on what's going on. And y'all do not forget this pickleball tournament. I have a confession. There are two things I've not learned how to do. It's pickleball and mahjong. Did I say that right? But everybody's doing it and they're having so much fun. So you guys need to get involved and support the shelter. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Dan. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you.